2. All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of our podcast. Tonight, we're coming just a week later, so a lot sooner than we usually do on our normal podcast. We're going to be talking about some playoff scenarios that are happening right now, talk about the games that's going on, even talk about some MVP stuff. Might even get into a little bit of some Marvel, talk about some things going on with that, since we hadn't hit on that in a while, but we'll see if we get there. Ryan is with us tonight. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing all right.
We're looking to have David and Luke with us, possibly not Ross, but I'm fixing to have a good friend of mine, Kevin, join us tonight. He wanted to talk about some things that were on his mind. One thing is about something we hit on a little bit, and we've talked about briefly, is some Aaron Rodgers. So let's get him in here, and we'll go ahead and get that going. So Ryan, have you been watching the games today?
I have been paying attention to the games today.
I've actually watched both games, most of this game that's going on now, but I've pretty much watched all of the first 2 games. So
I've only really paid attention to I can say about every single game that's been played so far this weekend. It's mostly been just like paying attention to what's going on. I will probably sit down and watch tomorrow night's game, like actively watch it, but every other game has just been following along.
I will watch the Peyton and Eli broadcast of it.
They're actually doing that, aren't they?
Yep.
Oh yeah, then I'll definitely be watching that.
Yep.
By the way, speaking of Peyton Manning, if you ever hear this, which you most assuredly will, I support your bid to become the Broncos owner.
That'd be pretty cool.
It would be pretty cool. I would prefer you over Elway.
It shows you how much he cares about that organization, just being with him for a couple of years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of I don't know to say, it's surprising, and like in a good way, because apparently he's fallen in love with Colorado. Like he lives there now.
Yeah,
and everything. So, but he's one group that's bidding on that. Another group is John Elway, and some group that's behind him. I'm not really sure. So, which favored son of Colorado is going to win? The Broncos is the question.
Yeah, no. Oh, Kevin, you with us?
I'm here.
All right. All right, Kevin, we've been live for a little bit, just briefly talking about today's games, talking about
I don't want to talk about
it. I figured you didn't want to talk about at least one of the games so far.
Yeah.
So when it's time to talk about those games, you can move on to your nightly nachos and cheese dip and stuff, and just
sounds good. I got it waiting.
soak away into your dreams. First, I had another person I was hoping would be on about this topic. So you and I briefly talked earlier about Aaron Rodgers and discussion of kind of the person he is.
Yeah.
In our last podcast, well, let me set this up for you. So back in the season, beginning of the season, Ron and I talked about the very first game that the Packers had, where they played the Saints, and Aaron Rodgers possibly played the worst game of his football career.
Right.
And then he goes off and has MVP numbers for the next 16 games. And so Ron made the comment that, he's teasing everybody, he threw that game on purpose, and he's going to, NFC championship or Super Bowl, he's just going to tank it and be like, see, told you, kind of like back in your face kind of thing. So the other night, talking to my friend David, now big Packers fan, so sometimes I feel like, he's a little bit biased in his arguments. He's talking about, well, he thinks that the perfect way to go out, and rubbing everybody's face is go and win a Super Bowl and say, see what I can do. But I told him the other night that's a win for everybody. The Packers,
Right.
everybody got to win. So I gave him an
Yeah.
example. I said, if 49ers, won their game and they're going to Lambeau next week, that would be like saying, hey, David, let's go to the Green Bay.
Yeah.
We're going to Green Bay. And I get up to Lambeau Field. I'm like, oh yeah, only got one ticket. See you after the game. And I walk in.
Right.
I was like, that's me being Aaron Rodgers and leaving you out to dry. That's a win-win for me, lose-lose for you, because I took you all the way to Lambeau, and then I'm like, oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you. So, and some other reasons why I kind of agree with Ryan. Now, that would be pretty harsh, and he'd go down as probably the biggest douchebag ever if he did that.
Yeah.
Especially if it came out to be true, or if he just was like, you know what, I'm not showing up to the Super Bowl. I'm just going to disappear. Right. But he hasn't talked to his family in 10 plus years. He just cut them off.
Yeah, cut them off.
His relationships with women, it's like, I'm done with you. You're just like, oh, you're old pair of socks. I'm just done. And he doesn't need football. Like 6 months ago, he was fine. He was happy until Packers pretty much gave some leeway. And, now my thing is, and I've told, Kelsey this, I feel like sometimes in sports, they do let players have a little too much management.
Yeah.
Like the GM's supposed to run the team, the owner's supposed to make decisions, coaches supposed to make decisions. Everybody else works for those people, and they're supposed to do what they say. And I feel like when a player can step up and say, no, I don't want that person on my team, or you better get that person or we're going to have issues, I feel like that's when the players are more in control. Now, I do get it. Aaron Rodgers might really think Jordy Nelson has he has some more steps in him. We don't need to get rid of him. And Clay Matthews, he's still a great presence out there. Don't get rid of Randall Cobb. Like he probably sees stuff that other people don't, especially with LaFleur being the new guy coming in and McCarthy was going out. But and I was trying to tell David this, if somebody came up and said, Aaron, you're 30-something years old, we have to have somebody that can step in to take over you, just like you were coming in to take over Brett Favre.
Yeah.
He might be like, that's pretty good. And he could even say, I think this guy, I think Patrick Mahomes matches my game style for the offense that you're wanting to do best. Or I think Jalen Hurts matched he could have picked those things, but to just go out there and say, well, we're getting Jordan Love and you draft him, and I can understand, he could probably he could see some things or see some of himself in there. So I kind of get it, but that was still my thing. And I try to go with David, was the fact that I just feel like Aaron Rodgers he could just walk away and he'd be happy, just like Calvin Johnson, Barry Sanders, Patrick Willis with the Niners, and some of these guys that said, well, I'm getting a lot of concussions and I'm just done. These guys are retiring when they're 30, Andrew Luck. So, and, he's won a Super Bowl. He's going to go in the Hall of Fame probably, but what are your takes? And you don't even have to talk about that. What are your takes on Aaron Rodgers and the kind of person he is?
I have never, honestly, I never really liked him up until kind of seems like this year. And I've actually liked him more. He has seemed more real this year to me than in past years.
He's been putting on a fake persona or something over the recent year or over the years until now.
Well, I didn't like him back whenever he went up to Brett Favre. If you remember, whenever he got drafted, and he went up to Brett Favre, and he said they were at a practice facility, and it was breakfast, and he went up to Brett Favre, and he said, "Hey, Grandpa, how's it going?" And it's just no respect. And Brett Favre, I don't know if they ever mended their relationship or not, but for years Brett Favre hated him.
Yeah.
But it just seemed like he's always had a chip on his shoulder, and rightfully so. I mean, he got drafted late first round, and he was asked to go to New York to be involved in the whole draft process, and then
also,
not to get.
I was going to say he also wanted to be drafted by the 49ers, and they talk about that every time the two teams play, that he has a grudge with them.
Yeah, but he's just, I don't know, he's just always seemed like he's just always seemed like a jerk to me. And even this year, like it wouldn't, he seems like the type of person that would just not show up for the Super Bowl. Now, I don't know. Surely he wouldn't, but it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't, just to prove a point.
Yeah.
I don't think he will, but it wouldn't shock me. Just the way professional athletes are nowadays.
With Deshaun Watson and
well, look at what's his name, AB from Tampa Bay. I mean, went crazy in the middle of the game. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is there yet, but hopefully not.
He hasn't hit senile yet.
Yeah, but yeah, it's like you said. He treats his women, like they're trash, and his family
flavor of the week.
Yeah, his family. He hasn't talked to them in 10 years, and he just, I don't know. He just seems like, and I may, meet him off the field, and he may be like the nicest guy ever.
I know.
And the stories that we hear about him may be completely false. Who knows? But he just, I don't know. He just has always seemed like he's felt like everybody owes him something. And I'm like, you're the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. I mean, come on. You have proven yourself over and over. Sure, you haven't won the Super Bowls that you probably would have wanted to win, but it's kind of like in the 90s, the NBA players in the 90s, like Patrick Ewing and everybody else, like they did, whenever Jordan was playing, he dominated. He was dominating. Nobody else got a chance to win in the 90s because Jordan had it. But we still consider these other players great. We consider Karl Malone great, John Stockton great, Patrick
Charles
Ewing
Barkley.
great, Charles Barkley. They didn't win, but we consider them great. And it's the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. Yes, Tom Brady, he wins and wins and wins, but that doesn't negate what Aaron Rodgers has done.
Yeah. And it's like Dan Marino. Dan Marino held all those records, and he was still considered a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Right.
But yet people always went after Peyton Manning. And it's like, well, but Peyton Manning has won a Super Bowl. He didn't get dominated in the Super Bowl.
Right.
So like I said, I get you on that because he's had a lot of good teams. A lot of times that I thought, well, he's going to make it and win another Super Bowl, and we talked about this on our last podcast, Kevin, that, I felt like this is probably the best all around team that he's had in a while. Because I feel like the defense is pretty good. So I think they probably had the better shot at winning this year, and
yeah, it wouldn't shock me. I mean, if they're in the Super Bowl, but I'm not going to pick them until I see them take down Tampa Bay and Tom Brady.
Yeah. Well, and one thing, I told David this, and we'll probably talk about this later because we're going to talk about MVP, and him and Brady are the top two they talk about. Like he threw 2 interceptions in that very first game that he played like crap, but he's only thrown 2 for the next 16 games.
Right.
So it's not, can it happen? Yeah, but it's just, I just, like I said, I told David, is just crazy on, how bad he looked. And I told him, I was like, he goes, well, it's the first game of the season. I was like, I get it. I get it. And he wasn't really with them in the offseason, but it's not like he doesn't know the offense.
Right.
Let's say he's a rookie and he set out the offseason saying, well, I'm a rookie. I should get a bigger contract.
Right.
And he didn't know the offense. Okay. But he knows the offense. Like, he's at the point now, he can miss a whole week of practice to recover from an injury and would be fine stepping in that game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's my thing. And I told David, I was like, I want you to go ahead throughout his whole career. I want you to look at the first NFL games of the season. And I was like, you know what? Take that back. I want you to find any game in his season of his career, even preseason, and find a worse game that he did.
Right.
And let's make it comparable. So, Luke, I see you're with us. Thank you for joining us. Hey, Ryan, so we've heard you talk about it. Anything different? Anything you want to add about that?
No, I'm only going to double down at this point. Aaron Rodgers will screw the Green Bay Packers out of a Super Bowl.
Are you doing like the Charles Barkley guarantee, like he's been doing with the Georgia Bulldogs and all them?
Yeah.
First of all,
Until it doesn't happen, I believe it's going to happen.
You mispronounced Dak Prescott and Cowboys in that sentence.
Let's not bring that up.
I fully believe that Aaron Rodgers will, in the final moments, even if they're in the Super Bowl, like, I'm not going to believe it until the game's over with, because until their season's over with. Like, I'm going to keep believing it until the season's over with. That's what I mean. Like, let's say, it's like they're going on a game-winning drive, and in the final minute of the Super Bowl, and if he just like throws a pick to like just a wide open cornerback or the defensive back, at that moment I'm gonna go, see, I told you.
Or hikes the ball and then just turns around, starts walking back to the other end zone.
Yeah, I'm serious. Like, I can see it until the game is over with, or until their season's over with. I'm gonna believe that he is out to get them, and he's out to hurt them as much as possible.
All this drama makes me think of like all the off seasons when they're like, "Oh, Brett Favre retired." I'm like, when week 1 starts, then I'll believe it, because he'd always come back. And then they're like, "Well, he's not coming back. They said they weren't going to sign him." I'm like, okay. And then what happens? Goes to the Jets. I was like, well, he still didn't retire, but
the only thing that would make me the only thing that even attempts to waver me from my position on Aaron Rodgers is I genuinely believe he likes the people of Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, that picture that came out last summer. Was it last summer? No, it was after football season's over with last year. And he's in the back of the truck riding with just a bunch of Wisconsin good old boys to get beer. If that's the kind of stuff that makes me believe, like, he might do it for the city, but he's not doing anything for the organization. Like, he does not like them. It's very clear. And that's why I 100% believe he's going to try to burn it all down at some point or another.
See, I can't imagine him doing that, because if I've got the chance to win a Super Bowl, even if it's with a team I don't like or don't have plans to stay with after the season, it's still a Super Bowl. It's still something that can't be taken away. I've got a ring on that finger.
But how much does he care, though, since he's already won a Super Bowl?
Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Does he care?
I mean, the constant here is that this man has not talked to his family. And I think we would all agree, and I think most people in the world would agree, that family is, a little bit more important than Super Bowl. So, and he holds a grudge.
Didn't his family's house burn down and he wouldn't even help them?
I think
I'm not
so.
sure about that.
I don't
I think
really
that was
know.
just
I've
an
heard-
insurance commercial.
I feel like I've heard that before, but
But
I mean, good chance Luke's right. He'll actually just win it just to say he won it, and then
well, yeah.
go to another
And then
team,
it makes him more desirable for another team. Like he can get a better trade offer.
and then go to another team.
Well,
and
my
then
thing
watch
is,
them
but
burn.
here's my thing. He's already made his name. Like he could have left this offseason and any team would have went out and got him pretty much, besides like the Tampa Bays or anything like that. But like even if he played the first game the way he did and the Packers were like, oh, he's fell off the cliff, and they were like, we're releasing you.
If he leaves after this offseason, I really believe, and not just being a hardcore fan of them, it seems like Denver is the landing spot, and it'll depend on who the head coach is. And Denver is going after, or they've interviewed, not necessarily the person they're going after all the way, but they have interviewed his offensive coordinator. So, but I mean, that's the most enticing team. That's the most, out of all the teams that aren't in the playoffs this year, that roster is the most Super Bowl ready roster. So I could see him going there.
Well, the only thing here's another thing. This is what I told David also. Aaron Rodgers from a lot of former players. Now, it could just be sour grapes, but if one person said it, like a Antonio Brown, Terrell Owens, things like that, I might say, well, look who it is. But some certain receivers and offensive linemen and stuff have said that Aaron Rodgers is probably one of the best quarterbacks they've ever seen. But as a leader, he is horrible. And they don't like his leadership skills. And he is too big on trust. Like Devontae Adams, about 4 or 5 years ago, he did not like Devontae Adams. The only people he would throw to is Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. And like he had to develop trust, just kind of like with Lazard and Valdez Scantling now. He's trusting them because I've heard them talk about the little work habits and the practices and stuff where like pretty much he gives them a ring through where they've got to catch so many passes and they've got to do this stuff before he'll trust them. And I get it, because you want to know if you throw that ball to them that they're going to catch it.
That's true.
But then again, it's kind of like, well, now I think Devontae Adams is a great route runner. He's up there with Stephon Diggs. But it's like, in a way, it's like Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson is going to get all those. Little side note, I think Travis Kelce just threw a touchdown pass.
Oh my gosh.
He did, to Pringle.
I hate that team so much.
Anyways, sorry. It kind of threw me off when I realized there was a huge guy
that
throwing.
team so much.
If we were still in fantasy season, this would be a great day for Travis.
Good
But,
night. Let the record show, people that listen to this, I just despise the Kansas City Chiefs. And if it wasn't for the stupid Los Angeles Chargers or wherever they're at now, they would actually be playing a team today and not what's left of the Steelers.
Yeah. But, I felt like Devontae Adams, because sometimes that seems like the only person he throws to. And it's like, well, when he gets 10 or 15 yards each catch, well, yeah, he's going to have 10 catches for almost 200 yards. But it's like, there's other people on the team could catch it too. That's the reason why they're in the NFL. But I don't know. It's just Aaron Rodgers is just an odd duck. There's certain movie stars out there too that they're great actors and actresses, but they're just weird. So, well, I guess we will maybe veto that or table that topic for David on another time, because I thought that's what we were doing. So we will look at that later. So one thing I want to talk about, this is something me and Kevin and I talked about earlier, and this is something that came up a long time ago. I think we briefly talked about it in a podcast before. So Arkansas baseball, Kevin Kopps, who phenomenal closer, used him in some starting positions. We talked about how, how good he can be and stuff. And now that's also based on pretty much 2 seasons because he's had some injuries and stuff, and also just because his first couple seasons he was really not that good. But there was talks about them building a statue for him. But my thing is, so my personal thing is, what did he do? Like, he didn't bring a championship to Arkansas. That I know of, he didn't like I know he won pretty much like the Heisman of the pitch, the pitching awards and stuff like that. And I get that, but Heisman winners just don't get a trophy at their stadium, for football. But like for like Arkansas sports standards, like McDonald, who was track legend and god up there, numerous indoor and outdoor championships in a row. But like Corliss Williamson, possibly Scotty Thurman, Darren McFadden kind of put Arkansas back on the map for a little bit. Even Matt Jones with his athleticism, had some big games and stuff and kind of broke some records. But none of them were talked about. Do what?
Todd Day,
yeah. Those early 90s, especially before Corson got there, those were, rolling with Nolan. That's when that started. But like, why is no one speaking up saying, well, how about them? Why shouldn't they earn more? So, Ron, what are your thoughts? Like,
I don't really have an opinion on statues, like at all. To be honest, like Kevin Kopps, the championship that he brought us was the SEC one, and then he very much helped us win the SEC tournament, which is pretty cool and everything. I've said this before. I don't know if I said it on here, but I've told those people, like, I do think Arkansas would have won a national championship this year, not off the glove of Kevin Kopps per se, although he would have probably took us over, but had our one of our aces that was getting better over the season not gotten hurt and I think he had a Tommy John injury or whatever it's called. But I think we would have won a championship had Peyton Pillette, I think that's his last name, how you say his last name, not gotten hurt this past year, because that just killed our rotation and everything. But I don't know, like statues to me, there's really not. I don't hate them. If they build one for him, it'd be
my thing cool,
I
is,
suppose.
Well, do you agree that he should get one just based on of one phenomenal year and an average year and then a bunch of crappy years that he had it? Like, it would be different if he came out and set the all-time saves record and ERA record, but his ERA was like a 6 one year. Like, that's my thing.
I think it depends, and that's maybe a strange answer. I think it depends on where they put it. Like, I could honestly see at some point in the future having like a specific area on the campus for like a sports Hall of Fame sort of type of thing, and you would have multiple statues or memorabilia of multiple players. I think if they did that, then I'd be like, yeah, I could see them doing Kopps just because.
Yeah, I'm just talking about. But I'm not talking about them saying, well, we're going to do like a Hall of Fame thing. We're going to put, but them just saying we were wanting a Kopps thing because of how great he was. That's my thing.
I don't know. Argue with Ryan a little bit and say it's not where you put it; it's how big is it? Because if a figurine size one, he probably earned that. But at the same time, I would put like his photo up in a big, like the president of a company, and hang that on the wall of the field house. He's earned that because he was a great closer. He really did help us clinch that SEC. And so I would put his picture up in the field house or something. But if you're talking about on the way up to Ball Stadium, I don't think so. I'm sure pictures that came before him and pictures that will come after him that are going to do more than he did. So,
I like I think with the team they've got this year. They have a better chance this year than last year of actually running the table all the way and everything. Personally, just from what I've seen and read about it. But
Well, we shall see. Kevin, what are your takes?
Yeah, you know my takes. I mean, it's I don't even know if he. I mean, yeah, put a picture up there, but I mean, going back. I mean, he had a good season, and I don't even remember him from last season or the seasons before this past season. I don't remember him. I don't remember him much at all. And I mean, I don't follow the baseball team as closely as I do basketball or football, but my thing is, I'm so sick of this GOAT talk for people who do nothing. Like it's like whenever a player has a good season, oh, he's the GOAT. And people talk about Dave Van Horn being the GOAT. Dave Van Horn is not the GOAT of anything, except for having a really good regular season baseball team and choking when it comes to the tournament. And so if you want to call him the GOAT of that, then yeah, by all means. And Kevin Kopps, okay, yeah, he had a good season, but he didn't get the job done. You want to know who did get the job done? Corliss Williamson, Scotty Thurman, those guys got the job done. And so if you want to talk about statues, I think at least Corliss Williamson, because people forget just how big the 1994, 93 through 95 Razorback team was. They forget how big they were and how big Corliss Williamson was. And I get, and somebody told me this in relation to the Kopps deal. Well, Arkansas is just really excited because we've been through some hard times and we're excited to have a winner again. But I'm like, okay, that's cool. And I'm excited. I'm glad the baseball team's good. And I think Kopps is a great pitcher. But I had a really good season of Little League Baseball in the 5th grade. But I didn't get a statue for that. I mean, it didn't last. Nobody remembers that. And nobody's going to remember Kevin Kopps a year from now, 2 years from now. We're not going to be talking about him. And so, but you want to know what we're still talking about? We're still talking about the 1994 National Championship team, partly because that's the last thing we won. But we're still talking about that team. That team is still special. Nolan is still special. And I don't even know, does Frank Burrows have a statue?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't know if anyone's got a statue.
He probably hand carved it himself.
Probably so.
I'm serious. I'm not sure anyone has a statue.
They may not. I can't. I was up there in October, but I don't remember seeing a statue.
My favorite statue is the Band of War statue.
Yeah.
Like that thing is just cool. That's all we need, in my opinion.
I'm with Kevin. If we're building statues, we got a long list, and Kopps is at the bottom, if anything.
Like,
yeah,
like I don't know.
Statues to me just really are not that.
Like I'm kind of like
started it, finished.
Yeah, like I'm not like Kevin, where like I kept up with baseball a lot. You know, I know how they are. I know that wherever Dave Van Horn's been, he has been a winner. You know, I think we talked about this before. Like Nick Saban is a GOAT because Nick Saban wins. Tom Brady is considered a GOAT because he wins. But Dave Van Horn, and it is tough, but there's been teams that have won back-to-back, you know, college World Series and things like that. But most time we either don't go to Omaha or we go and we're 1 out away from winning it and we can't win it and we lose that game and then lose the next game to lose the whole series.
They all stare at a foul ball as it drops to the ground.
But like
it's the curse.
No, like it would be different if Kevin Kopps, again, I don't know how highly touted he was if he was being, because you know, sometimes those kids can be looked at by professionals when they're in high school too. I don't know how highly touted he was when he came to Arkansas, but it would be different if his ERA was less than 2 or less than 1 and he broke like the Razorback record for most saves in the season. as a freshman, and then did whatever. Because I know last year he was recuperating from that surgery, or actually the year before that. I think they just kind of rested him last year, but it's not why his season was bad. So it's like this surgery made him that good. But, and we talked about this before. I think they just kind of overused him, and that's kind of where everything fell from there. But
I think okay, so as much as I love college sports across the board, like I love watching them more than I like watching pro sports. I do believe that, how good a player is will be reflective, will reflect on how they do on the pro stage. And, I know he's not in the, in the major part of the major leagues yet, but one thing that does kind of, and this is not an argument for building him a statue. It's just an argument for, just how good he is now versus where he was when he first got there and everything. Like, he goes into the, he got drafted by the Padres, I think. That's who they, and
Yeah.
he's in one of their lower leagues, and it's almost like he just, he didn't miss a beat. I know when baseball, you can just go into the next thing and just pick up where you left off. But, these guys that have been playing there for a little bit that have more pro experience in that sense, he's still striking them out. So I was like, when I saw that, I was like, well, that's pretty neat that he's actually, he's not just a freak situation where he's just really good in college and all of a sudden he just is the bust in the pro leagues. Because that's possible. I think that college and they get to the league and then they tank in all major leagues. So I thought that was pretty cool. But I'm on that. I don't think that like a statue is warranted at this moment for anyone really. But maybe that's just how I also feel about statues.
all right, go ahead and move on, Kevin. Or I know your time is limited. There's one more thing I wanted to talk about that wasn't on the agenda. I just want to get some thoughts that you and I kind of talked about earlier this week in a text message. Before you have to leave us, Georgia and Alabama. They played for the SEC championship and they played for the national championship. In some people's eyes, Georgia was still the favorite, even though they were the number 3 seed. And Alabama was number 1 seed, and the fact that Alabama had already pretty much beat them pretty well in the SEC championship game. So they played national championship, and what was it? 2 touchdown win, pretty much. Is that what it was? So they won. Now, Ron, Kevin and I were talking the other night. This game, the score looked a lot worse because there was that pick 6. Now, again, I don't agree. There's still plenty of time, and all of a sudden, still plenty of time in the game, and you just like, well, I'm going to throw it down deep down the right side, or I'm going to throw it deep again. Oh, now we're going to throw it up, interception, pick 6, and pretty much the game's over. It's out of hand. So the score looks a lot worse than what happened if Alabama could have got down there and got another score. But me and Kevin were talking about it. Can you really say that Georgia is better because they just both played each other within the last month, let's say, and they're tied? Now, you can say that Alabama's had just as much time, but then again, they both have had, especially Georgia, 1 month to only practice and study Alabama film instead of just 1 week to be prepared for the next week, or to possibly look ahead to that game and skip over the South Carolinas and the Tennessees, things like that. Like, now this is not going in line saying, well, UCF is the national champion because they beat Auburn and Auburn beat Florida State or whatever crap people like to say. I don't consider it that. But like this game, I felt like was a lot closer. Like if Georgia went out there and romped them by 3 or 4 touchdowns, then I could say, yeah, Georgia's a better team. But that defense still didn't look as dumb as it did all season to me. So like, what is your takes?
I don't know. Like,
because technically, a lot of people throw this fit out, and I know it's not going to happen, but you lost the last game of the season, which probably should boot you out of the national title contenders, but it doesn't happen when you're the number 1 team. You're only going to drop to number 3 or 4. And technically, I really felt like Georgia should have probably been the number 4 seed, and Michigan should have been number 1. But it's whatever.
I think consistently this year, Georgia was the best team in the nation. Like, because I mean, I'm kind of looking at the records at this point and just how they played teams. Georgia dominated everybody. Alabama didn't. Like, that's just fact of the matter. They didn't. They almost lost to Florida.
So is Texas? Is Texas A&M better? Are they better than Georgia?
Well, I'm the way I'm seeing it is like, if I had to say what's the better team out of the two, I'm just using their records, to speak for them and everything. But I don't know. I really think if Georgia's defense didn't play how they should have in the SEC championship game, like they should have overwhelmed the offensive line for Alabama with blitz packages, and they didn't really blitz all that much, or their packages just weren't good for whatever reason. And I felt like they should have overwhelmed them and just completely dominated them from start to finish in the SEC championship game. But for whatever reason, it's like their game plan was completely different from the Georgia, from how Georgia had played all season. And then, in the national championship game, it looked like it was the rest of the year, or beginning of the whole year and whatnot. Georgia didn't lose anybody either. That's another thing. And Alabama's 2-star wide receivers were not in the game.
Yeah.
So I think that does play a big role because, let's see. I think there were 3 or 4 plays that I can remember where the ball was there. It was just you were playing with a freshman wide receiver who hadn't played that much.
So let me ask you this.
They either weren't there or they didn't catch the ball.
Let's say the SEC championship wasn't there. And let's say they played week 1 and Alabama had won then. And now Georgia came back and won. Would you feel different then, saying, well, there's a whole season of improvement, yada, yada, yada. Georgia probably was the better team. Because, when people look at it, like let's say, if Arkansas played Georgia first game of the season, number 1 ranked Georgia, and Georgia loses to Arkansas, but then Georgia goes 0-13, everybody's gonna be like, well, yeah, we beat the number 1 team in the nation. Like, well, did you though? They didn't win a single game.
I was about to say, like the counter to my own argument is using Arkansas, because I really believe, and I'm not going to say they would have won the game, but I really believe that the Arkansas team that played Georgia the 5th week of the year versus the Arkansas team, like if the games were switched, I think Arkansas would have done way better against Georgia at the last half of the season than they did at the first half of the season. And it's because the time we played Georgia, we were just tired. Like, you could tell that they got overwhelmed in that stadium in that first big game the first real big road game they had that year or last year. So I don't know. Like, there's so many factors. I think there's just a lot. There's a lot. Like, I could see, if you played that game, if you played Alabama versus Georgia 9 times out of 10, I could really see it, and no one got hurt. I could see it being a 50-50 split, believe it or not.
Okay.
Because you also can't count out Saban. Like, Saban's he's that good of a coach. Like, I think he had his team prepared. I really believe it. And then you saw there was plenty of times in that game where, it wasn't the right person. If it was Mechie or if it was Williams, I think that's the other guy's name. If they were in that spot, that would have been a catch, or it would not have been a drop.
Yeah.
Or it would have been in position to catch the ball. Because I think one of their passes, one of Young's passes, it was right where it needed to be. The guy was just 5 yards, not 5 yards. He was like, a foot and a half, not where he was supposed to be. And you could tell it was just like, it's that young guy in the big game for the first time mentality. Yeah. So,
Kevin, do you have any other thoughts? I pretty much said what you and I talked about.
Yeah, I think Georgia, it's like Ryan said, from top to bottom, from the first of the season to the end, I think they were the best team. It just stinks, and I know football is a different game than baseball and basketball. It's just like if it would have been nice, you got a tie.
Best 3 out of 5 series or something.
Yeah. And if the Georgia Bama game, the first game would have happened like in the middle of the season, and then they played again in the national championship game, I probably wouldn't have said anything, because teams meet again in the NFL. It's like the year the Patriots won the Super Bowl or went undefeated but lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl. They beat the Giants in the regular season, I think the last game.
Yeah.
And then the Giants beat them in the Super Bowl. Well, if you turn around and play the next week, the Patriots probably would have won. It's about who's better that night.
Well, it's March Madness. March Madness.
Yeah, March Madness. These Cinderellas, if you played NBA style best of 7, we would not have any Cinderellas.
Dukes and Kentucky's would probably always win.
Yes, and so I'm not going to debate that Georgia's not the national championship champion. I think they are. It stinks because Alabama. I think if they play 10 times, there's, I think it would be very even, and so it just stinks that Alabama beat them, barely a month before that, and then you turn around and it was a pretty close game until right at the end.
Yeah.
And Georgia pulled away, and so it's just one of those things that that they're the national champion, but it would be nice if we're like, okay, well, it's tied 1 apiece. We're going to have another game tomorrow night to determine the true champion and stuff. Yeah. But college football has enough problems determining a champion. So
I know everything's going to fix it, just like the 98 season, starting with the BCS.
Right.
This is going to solve everything. And everybody's like, well, this didn't solve anything. And then they're like, well, we're going to do the football playoffs, but like, look at March Madness. Like, everybody's like, well, the top 64 teams is not enough. We're going to have 4 play-in games. And there's still people saying, like, here's my problem. I don't feel like 2 play-in games should be for an 8 seed and 2 play-in games should be for the 16 seeds. You should probably do all 4 of them for the 16 seeds.
Right.
And just be done with it. And the other thing, and I think we talked about this in a podcast a while back, I hate with the fact that, let's say the Razorbacks go 0-20, and the week of the SEC tournament, they go on that 4-game win streak and win the SEC tournament. They automatically get a bid over somebody that's 25-8.
Right.
And I don't think that's fair. Do they need credit because they won? Now, is that going to happen? A team that crappy going to win? No, but there has been some teams that were like 12-14 sitting at a 13 seed.
Unless they just had a lot of injuries and they got all their players back.
Yeah, like
into the season.
But that's how the rules are. And I don't think that, because then they'll probably be somebody that crappy, even though they came from the SEC, probably should just be a 16 seed. But then again, I feel
Right.
like people were like, "Oh no, they could be a 13," and I don't think that's fair. But like, I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff. And everybody's gonna like if they did an 8 football playoff, they're still gonna go, well, this team, it's not fair that 4 SEC teams are in it. They're like, well, you know what? You need to back your stuff up and recruit better,
Yeah.
or you need to get
I
better
will-
coaches.
I will say that in football, in my opinion, in football, more times than not, I really believe that in a football game, you're going to get the best team. I believe that.
Yeah.
Most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time.
Yeah. And it
There
might be
was
just because you're better prepared to prepare for a weekly basis where like
Right.
you play on that Thursday for March Madness and you're like, well, crap, we don't know who we're going to play until a couple hours from now. And then you got 24 hours to prepare.
It's like, and I very rarely agree with Skip Bayless on anything, but he said years ago, he said, the tournament, it's like you're playing, like you said, weird times, weird places, who you going to play next. And it is the name March Madness. That's why, like, I never question in the NBA, I never question who's the champion, because if you win it all in the NBA playoffs, the grueling 3-month playoffs that they go through, you're the champion.
Yeah. Yep.
I know people didn't like the fact that it wound up being an SEC national championship game this year. But the truth is, this was just a year where the SEC was just, exceptionally good in the season
Right.
and everything. And I think it would have gone, honestly, I think there was a lot of teams this year that could have made a legitimate playoff run.
The only way you're going to be able to do that is, like I said, if you make the season longer and have like the top 4 SEC teams play in a playoff, the ACC, the Pac-12, and then the winners go to a college football championship bracket, and just have one from every conference, and then they just battle it out, which we'll be going till these playoffs, NFL playoffs are over.
And I think
Right.
the chances of it happening again next year are pretty high.
Yeah.
Like, I think the only teams, like, I think.
Ryan, you there? Well, I think we lost Ryan. Ryan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. We lost you for a second.
Yeah, it just said my connection's unstable. I don't know why that's doing that. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think there's a chance that it happens again next year, because when you look at the SEC West, Alabama's going to reload. Like, that's a young team already, so they're going to be good. The only teams, in my opinion, that are going to drop off in the West, maybe Ole Miss, because they're looking for a quarterback, and it depends on if they bring in anybody at all at quarterback, and if Lane Kiffin stays. I think there's always a chance Lane Kiffin goes. Believe it or not. LSU, they're going to be rebuilding. Auburn's always a weird toss-up. But those are really the only 3 teams in the SEC West that I think dip down a little bit. And then in the East, Tennessee's getting better. South Carolina's getting better. Georgia's reloading. I think Florida's probably going to be a monster in a couple of years, to be honest with you. Vanderbilt's getting better. Like, they've had a pretty good recruiting class this year. Am I missing anyone in the East?
Well, but
South Carolina,
here's my thing.
Kentucky too.
Here's my thing.
I like the East.
The only ones that know how to use their, like, Tennessee had top 10 recruiting things for like 4 years and couldn't finish better than 8.
Yeah, but I like Heupel. He's a good coach.
I'm not talking about Heupel. I'm talking about there's only certain coaches out there that can take that talent and win with their systems. Boise State is crazy. It went undefeated and competed with SEC teams and beat them with 3-star and 2-star recruits because they made their people grow, and made them play against the big dogs, and that, like, and now Georgia and Alabama, they know how to make people that are 5 stars be 5 stars. But, like, looking on paper, yes, all those teams getting all that, Like I said, it makes them look good. But I wouldn't be surprised if one day 3 of the top 4 teams somehow worked out that they're from the SEC, and then one of those teams can't fall out of the top 4 because they don't have a chance of losing in the SEC tournament or SEC championship. You know what I mean? So if you
Yeah.
have this situation and then Georgia loses, they drop the 4. The team that was, let's say, South Carolina was 3. Alabama goes from 2 to 1, and South Carolina either stays 2 or 3. You know, like just gonna be in one of those situations. But
I do think one thing that I've been finding funny too is that I've always liked the playoff. Like I think the playoffs is one of the best things to happen, and I think they need to work it out to make it better. Even if that doesn't mean expanding it, I think there's a way to probably make it better and whatnot. But I've seen a lot of people this year saying, and because of the fact that Alabama and Georgia win the SEC or win the national championship this year, have been saying that they miss the good old days with the BCS. And of course, you have the pushback on that. It's like, we got rid of the BCS because of this right here. If we go back to the BCS, we're just going to have again this right here. So
yeah,
it's been something that's kind of made me laugh this year.
Yeah.
It's just that it's kind of funny.
All right, we're gonna move on from that. Kevin, are you sticking with us or?
I'm gonna have to leave you on that one.
All right, man. I appreciate you being with us tonight, and
Yeah, man.
chatting with
Thanks
us.
for the invite.
No problem. If there's ever something that you want to chat about, or you have a buddy that wants to debate that y'all are arguing something, then just come in and let me know, and we'll all debate together.
All right, sounds good.
All right, thanks for seeing you.
All right, see you.
All right, so Ron,
Luke left.
yeah, Luke left. I wonder what happened with that.
He doesn't think we're done.
So first thing I want to kind of talk about is Joe Burrow. I don't know if you saw in the second quarter, about 1:50.
Man is ice cold.
About 1:50 left in the second quarter. He was running out of bounds or running towards the sideline, threw past the back of the end zone. They said that he was out of bounds. They talked about it. They ruled that he wasn't out of bounds, and they said it was a touchdown. Now, everybody was saying, well, the whistle blew. But if you listen to the whistle is like when the ball is like 80 to 90% almost there. So it was been a very, very late whistle. But then, the replay guy that they talked to, or referee they talked to in the coverages of the games, he said something about, well, you can't, that's not reviewable when the whistle blows and it stops the play. But it didn't stop the play. The play went on. They called him. They went over there and discussed, the 3 refs, about if he was out of bounds or not. So then they kind of talked about, like, one of the players looked like he didn't really try. But again, the ball was almost there. I felt like if the whistle would have blown as he was releasing or right after he released, I could see that player not trying. So did you get to see the replay of it or anything?
I didn't watch that.
Oh, well.
I remember watching that.
Well, like my thing is,
To me, it didn't stop, and wasn't it a touchdown? Isn't that what they were looking at?
yes.
Yeah. So, and if I remember correctly, the guy was also far enough back that even if the defender had, quote unquote, quit on him, even if that's what he did, the defender still couldn't have gotten to him. Like, that ball was well placed by the quarterback, and the only person going to touch it was the receiver. And he did. He caught it in the end zone, fair catch, the way it was supposed to, all the qualifications, all the boxes were checked. It was a touchdown pass. So I got no problem with calling that one a touchdown. If you're going to call that inadvertent whistle, that's what you're going to stand on. That's some really shaky ground. I'm sure there's some fans that are just butthurt over it.
Well, like,
And so they're clinging to everything they can, kind of like the Cowboys fans tonight. Like they're starting to throw all these silly accusations about all this other stuff. Just
Well,
your
like
team
with Joe
isn't the
Burrow,
best tonight.
I just felt like the pass was almost there before you even heard the whistle. And I felt like when he caught it, the guy would have probably been like looking around, not when, like, for him to react that way, the whistle should have happened way before, is what I thought. But anyways, another quick little topic. Today, the Buccaneers were up like 31-0, Ryan.
It was bad.
The guys kept talking about Tom Brady. This will probably be his last drive. They'll kind of get through the third quarter. Well, then he comes out in the fourth quarter, with Gronk and everybody, and they're already thin. They lost Antonio Brown's crazy tail. Chris Godwin's hurt. They had another receiver get hurt. All you have is Mike Evans. And he's still out there. Like, if anybody, why is he still out there? But the Eagles score a touchdown because, and this is another thing I'm going to get to here in a second. They score a touchdown, and it's like, well, now we got to keep Tom Brady in. No, you don't. It's 31-7. So, like your Super Bowl chance. Like, as you get older, getting over injuries it's harder to recover. So if Brady is out, y'all are done. And maybe even his career, depending on the injury. So did you get to see any of that, or?
I didn't watch that game either. Like, I heard about it. I know what you're talking about, those people being upset about it. I mean, it doesn't really surprise me that Brady stayed out there, like, at all. I said it last week or the last time we did a podcast. I think he's proving a point, and it might bite him in the butt. It might not bite him in the butt.
But the thing is, he wasn't trying to score, though. That's not my thing. It's not like he was actually trying to pass and trying to run up the score. They're running the ball, trying to run out the clock. It would be different if I felt like he was throwing 30-yard bombs to Mike Evans.
See, and if I'm the coach, I'm pulling him. I'm not risking him. He's not in bad health or anything. He's just older. So if something does go wrong, it's not just a season ender, it's a career ender. So I'm not taking that risk. I could get the towel boy off the sideline to go hand off the pass or go hand off the ball if they're just going to run the ball.
And my other thing,
note, Mike Evans being your only receiver, apparently he's all they needed too, because he was phenomenal today.
My other thing, Ryan, is when Jalen Hurts was injured the last couple games, they had Gardner Minshew in, and they did well enough that they clinched playoff spot and they're in there. When do you think Jalen Hurts is playing like crap? Well, it's over. Ben Roethlisberger's last game, possibly. But why not take a chance with Gardner Minshew? See if you could spark up something maybe in the middle of the third quarter. You know what I mean?
See, my thought on that is, sorry, Ryan.
No, I'm thinking about it. So
okay.
Tell me
I'm thinking the last few games, Minshew's has been my go-to. Right? He led us into the playoff. Why not let him at least start it? Because it couldn't have been worse than what it started for the Eagles anyway. It was 1-0. Like, at what point are you like, you know what? I'm gonna let the guy who got us here get us here.
Well, that's what I was saying. I probably wouldn't have started him in the game just because Jalen Hurts has had you, but eventually I would have been like, we've got to get a spark just to see what's going on. But anyways, those are my two thoughts. Now, my little side note to that is aggressive and conservative. I hate conservative defenses. As a Tampa Bay Bucks fan, being up 31-0, I don't want them to score. And I understand, Ryan, people say, well, you don't want to give up the big plays. Well, guess what? 49ers didn't want to give up the big plays either, and they kept dropping 7 or 8 people back 15, 20 yards, and Dak Prescott kept throwing 15, 20 yards down the field.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like those are giving up big plays because
Exactly.
your ultimate goal there is to not give up the touchdown. And it's like, I don't like it either. Like I don't want to stay as aggressive as possible, especially in a situation like that. I want them to know that,
Now I
by
might throw
putting
some, some help over the top with a safety or something. That way they don't try to beat me with a deep post or something. But
If
I
a
don't know.
pre defense worked, that would be the defense. That would be the standard package. It
Well,
wouldn't be a or a dime or
it
anything.
can, but if you just
In
drop
my
back,
experience, from all the years of watching TV or football, college, professional, pee-wee, whatever, you're right. They can walk it down the field, but they're going to. Like, you're giving up 10 yards of play. That's a first down every pass.
well, the only thing is there's according to what kind of prevent defense you do. Like if you're doing what the 49ers did.
I can't stand a prevent defense. Like,
But again, they're different types. If you do the thing that the 49ers are doing, you're just dropping back because you don't want him throwing 50 yards down the field. But if you're actually doing a prevent defense where you are up and you're making the people work, because I've seen it work where they put him towards the middle of the field for one, and then that makes the clock run out and then potentially turn over the ball. It's just kind of like the whole free throw thing. I've seen the games work where people can't hit the free throws at the end when they're fouling them and come back and win the game. Then I've seen people hit the free throws and it didn't work out. I've seen it, unless you're Tom Brady or Joe Montana, it hardly ever works to make it down the field in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like Romo brought that up during the game today, and I didn't even really think about it until he said it.
Well, here, go ahead.
But like, the prevent defense that he was saying that's what they needed to do was protect the sidelines. And that's what they did. You saw on each side, you had 3 stacks of defensive backs on the sidelines. And, that, especially where the Cowboys were, yes, they need to get downfield, but if the clock was still running.
But they only did that for one play.
Yeah, they only did that for one play. Yeah. And that's what he brought up. He said they should have been doing this the whole entire time because you wanted that clock to kill as quickly as possible. And so, like, I agree. My thing is I don't hate prevent defenses if they are doing a very specific thing, but I would prefer like go regular D, send pressure, especially like I think a blitz package on a drive like that is what is needed because Dak Prescott this year, well, at least the last half of this year, has not been great rolling out and tossing the ball. He's not been. So if you bring someone to, to make him uncomfortable in the pocket and make him scramble, there's a good chance he's going to make a bad throw. And that's what, and that would have ended the game a lot quicker than them even having a controversy at the end of the game with what happens. So
let's get in.
You got to dance with the girl that brought you. You know what I mean? Like the 49ers, they've been playing pretty good defense the whole game. And then they drop that and they give up they're not giving up the big play, but they're giving up big plays. Like in that last drive down the field, there were like 4 downs and all of them were first downs. Like every play was a first down and then another first down and then another first down. So they took up like 40 yards and it seemed like 15 seconds, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So
I think
you may not be giving up one big play, but you're giving up the big play, even if it's in smaller chunks.
Yeah.
And I think if you were 31-0 for the whole game playing that defense, keep playing that defense.
Yeah. I agree.
Don't switch at the end and give up 17. That's not good defense.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think there's probably a lot of 49ers fans out there that, are gonna, until they're able to get over the hump again, which I think is gonna happen sooner than later, believe it or not. Maybe even this year, like looking at them and seeing what they can do, it's possible. But and until they stop playing conservative and everything, like if they go aggressive the whole time, I think that's going to start helping out the morale of San Francisco fans because, hey, I like him, but I think a lot of times Kyle Shanahan wants to play conservative to like not lose the game, and it's like keep just killing them, Kyle. Just keep killing them. That's all you have to do.
There's a
Right.
difference in playing to win and playing not to lose.
Yeah.
All right, so
Win.
actually talking about that game. So before we get into all all the crazy stuff, so the first downs ended up being pretty even. When at one point it was like 9-0 because I think they had more. 49ers had more first downs than Cowboys had plays at one point, but like the 49ers pretty much on both sides of the ball had good offensive plays. You know, the defense was doing great. Bosa was pressuring he can't be an all pro, but yet he got a sack and was putting pressure on Dak Prescott every time. They outrushed him, and then Dallas wants to come out at the end of the game and say, oh, well, Zeke played with an injury. Yeah, okay. He just sucked is what I'm going to say. Like, he might have an injury, but whatever. But Dallas was just so undisciplined and had all the worst penalties at the worst times. And they had penalties throughout the game. But you have 14 penalties for almost 100 yards. Like, for one, you're the most penalized team in NFL. So it's not like a surprise. So you didn't get better with that. And it bit you in the butt. You know, Garoppolo threw that interception. And that was a big interception. I felt like in the second half, San Francisco could have just put away Dallas, and Dallas couldn't take advantage of it. But then again, I feel like that's more Dallas's fault than San Francisco at times. But I feel like 49ers pretty well managed. I think some of it was the whole play calling like we just talked about. But so the last play, again, we talked about this. I felt like, you know, some of your better pass rushers, but Fred Warner and Bosa are not in the game. But, you know, I don't want them beating me 20 or 30 yards down the field. But when they're getting 40 yards down the field in just 30 seconds, then that becomes an issue because you're letting them. And again, I thought that was the dumbest thing ever. It looked like 49ers were confused when they were putting the cornerbacks and stuff to guard the sidelines. That's why they had to call a timeout. So, Ryan, I want to hear your take of it. What do you think of that last play call?
The quarterback sneak. Well, I said this to you before this started, but I've seen it. It happened. I watched it happen all year this year, where on a crucial down, there was a QB draw drawn up for whatever reason. I don't know why that was the decision made. Like, yes, it did work in the favor of in a way, but I don't like the play call. Ultimately, I think it was dumb. I don't know what Kellen Moore was thinking. Like, I really thought he was going to continue doing the Boise State specials that beat Oklahoma. Like, you know, because that worked. That play that they ran, like, I think their first part of that drive, it was beautiful. It was so great. Why not do more of that? But I didn't like it. Thought it was a dumb play. Leading into what happens next, like, that's just, you know, I think that's bad luck. I don't think that is a bad ref. You know, I don't think the ref was trying to screw them out of anything. The rule is the ref has to touch the ball. He was trying to get down there. They probably should do something so the ref can get down there in the future. Like, make sure he's a ref not being fast or as fast is going to impede on how a team's able to get if a team's able to get off the next play or not. But I didn't like the call. Like, that's not what I would have done. Like, in any circumstances, a QB draw with no timeouts is just incredibly.
Like-
it's just not good. It's just
Yeah.
not a smart play.
Well, my thing
You would
is,
almost think that Kellen Moore is trying to get someone fired.
like, you know that as it's a rule, you have to give the ball back to the ref.
Yeah.
Like it is a rule, and they said that players, and I read something that players were told about this. So that Prescott slides, turns around, hands it to his center, and then starts getting under center. So I don't know the rules about this. So what happens if they snapped it? Like, would there even be a quote unquote play? Or would the ref just be like, oh, you can't do that here. I got to put the ball down. Do they just kind of ignore that it happened?
Well, if he has snapped the ball without touching the ball, I guess they could have probably ruled that an offsides. And if they ruled that an offsides
Been
on
10
Dallas,
10
it
yard
would have
or 10
it
second
would've-
runoff.
the runoff and the game would have been over.
So either way,
Here's the thing. Even if it's like, oh, silly center, you can't do that, and there's no penalty on it, now you've wasted the additional time anyway, because you did that, your offensive line moves because he snapped the ball or whatever, and now you have to reset, let the ref touch it, and then do it again. So either way, you ran 10 seconds off the clock, whether it's officials do it or you just did it. If you lost, like that was, how long, and that's what I told you earlier, Randy. I was like, how long has Dak Prescott been playing football? Because it's not just he started today. He's been playing for multiple years. He knows that the referee has to touch the ball. That you don't see a player setting the ball and marking the spot. Otherwise, the receiver that catches the ball would do it all the time. And they'd always give themselves like 2 or 3 extra yards. It's always a referee, always the umpire that sets the ball and tells them to go. And so he knows that that's part of the game. Just like basketball players, they know that if they're shooting free throws, after they shoot the free throw, the referee's going to touch the ball. He's going to pass it back to them. They're going to shoot their second shot. You can't just get your own rebound and shoot your second free throw. It's got to be touched by the official.
yeah.
And I cannot confidently say either that, if you're a Dallas fan out there, I'm sorry to say this, but let's say you got that play off, like it went your way. Do you really believe that Dak Prescott would have put it in the end zone the next play? Because that was it. Like that was the last play you had.
Second left, yeah.
Do you think it would have happened? The man who's been overthrowing receivers, who's been underthrowing receivers, do you think in that moment Dak Prescott would have put it in the hands of CeeDee Lamb or Cooper, whatever his name is, or Schultz? Although I think I would have trusted out of everyone, I would have wanted Schultz to be the person to have the ball in the end zone because I thought he was their best receiver this year for the most part when he wasn't hurt. But I can't say that Dak Prescott would have led a game-winning touchdown drive at that point. I don't think it would have happened.
Well, let me before we move on to our last thing. Did you see any of this game, or did you just catch?
The KC game?
No,
Which game?
The 49er game, one we're talking about.
No, I watched it. I actually watched it.
So did you see
most of all of them.
the loophole when Cowboys went for it on fourth down with the fake punt, and then they try to line up with the punter in the slot and stuff? And then
I saw the fake punt play.
Well, the very next play there was delay of game on Cowboys, and everybody's like, "Well, that's not fair." I saw some things written about that because the refs sitting there holding the ball, and by the time the ref moved, the time had run out. But Kyle Shanahan worked the little loophole right here because since they were kind of subbing some people, defense has so many seconds they can, sub people in where the ref will stand and hold the ball. So, and they were showing the sidelines, and Shanahan was like, "Go, go, go, go!" Like it seemed like he waited at the very last minute that you could, or last second, and sent his subs in to go be prepared for that. And that way it was, like time ran down, the ref held it, and then all of a sudden when they had their time, he stepped back, but then it was delay game. Like I thought it was kind of bad, but then again, it was kind of
That's just smart coaching on Shanahan's part.
Yeah,
And
What's
bad
that loophole?
coaching on the Cowboys. Like, okay, you want to run the trick play, but that's not your offense. Just because your punter threw the ball to a receiver doesn't mean he's now Dak Prescott. You can't run that offense with your punter behind center. So switch your players out. If you want to run a no huddle offense, do it the rest of the game, but don't do it right then. Switch, get set, let's go.
But anyways, yeah, I hate that game being a 49er fan. I hate that that's how it ended, but like I don't know what to believe. I saw where supposedly fans were throwing stuff at their own players. You know,
No, they were definitely throwing stuff at the refs because
well, but one of the reports I saw, they said as that video that was shown, as players were coming through, stuff was still being thrown.
Oh yeah, the reason why I knew they were at least throwing stuff at the refs because just like about maybe 30 minutes ago, I was seeing articles that they were asking Dak Prescott about it, and he was basically saying, "Oh, that's fine that they were throwing stuff at the refs."
Well,
That'll probably be a thing for the rest of the week.
but here's my thing. Does it suck? Yeah. Does it suck the ref was trying to get through there? But my thing is, just that half a second of the ref running into Dak Prescott and stuff, trying to reset the ball, I don't even think that would have been enough time because he snapped it as it was turning from 1 to 0.
You cannot blame the ref for that. I don't think any Cowboy fan is like. I know you're mad, Cowboy fans, but you cannot blame the ref for that.
Now, the only thing I can think of is
zoomed in on him, and you can see him sprinting as fast as he can. I mean, he's ref. He's not super duper fast, but he's sprinting.
Yeah.
I will say, maybe you give that guy.
He's running to get up there.
Maybe you give that guy a potential NFL tryout, no matter how old he is. Did you see how hard he hit Dak Prescott? The dude almost bowled over.
Yeah. Like the only thing I can think of is
and maybe Dak Prescott should have fallen over.
Like you can blame the ref that he wasn't as close as he needed to be in that situation. Like if it was a regular play when you know people are going to use the whole 40 seconds on the clock, yeah. But in that situation, you know what's trying to happen. You know you got to act fast. So as soon as Dak Prescott went, maybe you should have jogged up the field and been about 5 yards behind him, and then like hollering at him like number four, here, you know, or crap. Even you have another ball in your hand to be ready just to lay down and throw the other one aside. You know, like the whole kicker's ball. But all right, last topic, real quick, because kind of running out of time for tonight. MVP thoughts. What do you think? Right now, the top ones we're talking about is Brady and Rodgers. One has talking about Brady and then Rodgers, 43 touchdowns to 37, 12 interceptions to 4, which half of those were against the Saints for Rodgers, and Brady's had a lot of interceptions those last few games. 5,300 yards to 4,100. Completion percentage was better for Rodgers by about a point. QBR was about the same. They both had the same record. So there's other things you can look here with rushing touchdowns. Like Tom Brady did pass, you know, one of the best yardage seasons ever, but then again, averaging 312 yards, he had an extra game to almost break Peyton Manning's record, which those things are going to happen nowadays. So higher passing rating for Rodgers, more drops, you know, against. So what are y'all's thoughts?
I want to say probably Rodgers.
Yeah, most likely.
But
I would say.
I also want to say Josh Allen. Like I got to give that guy props too, because
his numbers were nowhere near like last year. I would have said last year, yes,
true.
but
when did they announce MVP?
After watching them play, the way they handled their playoff game, it was a convincing 30-point win.
Yeah, but you can't base it on one thing though.
If they did it after the season,
it is after the season.
It is okay.
I'm pretty sure,
or
it's like right before the Super Bowl or something.
If it's after the season, it just depends on which person like how good everybody does in the rest of the playoffs, even if they.
Well,
Yeah,
here's
I
my
wouldn't
thing
even
though.
say
It's
the
not
losers.
MVP for the season. It's MVP for the regular season.
I know. But like, anybody that's up there already in that contention, but it's probably going to be Rodgers or Brady. I don't know.
But here's my thing.
There's not been any wide receiver this year that's just, in my opinion, been like.
You don't think Cooper Kupp?
Oh yeah, Cooper Kupp. My bad.
That's mine. That is
Devontae
mine.
Adams, Stephon Diggs.
No, Cooper Kupp won. He had most touchdowns, most receptions, most yardage. He had the leader in all three. And nobody has done that since Jerry Rice, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember who they said. But he almost
Matthew
broke
Stafford.
He almost broke Calvin Johnson's record for most yardage in a game. Again, he had an extra game to do it, but still, that's how records can be now. But he had the triple crown in those stats.
Matthew Stafford knows how to make wide receivers look great.
Who else is on his team as far as receivers though?
Well, but the thing
OBJ?
is,
Because if I'm the only receiver on that team, only guy that the quarterback's going to every time, yeah, my stats are going to look better.
But
no, he's not.
But the thing is, defenses are double teaming him.
Yeah.
But see, that's my thing. Is that good offense or good defense? Because Devontae Adams is pretty much all they got, and he gets the yardage he gets.
Yeah. Honestly, like the Rams, they have Odell Beckham now. If Odell
Beckham is not being like guarded and stuff.
He's not the Odell Beckham of old.
What I was getting at there though was, he gets balls thrown his way. Robert Woods, before he got injured, was having a really good season. Stafford also likes to throw to Higbee and everything, his tight end, and his running backs are really good too. They have like a really good offense and everything. Really, the only downside of their offense has been Stafford when he plays bad.
Well, Cooper Kupp had 22 more receptions than second place, about 300 yards more than second place, and about 5 more touchdowns. And then he had 20, I'm guessing this is yardage, 30 plays of 20 plus or more yards.
Yeah, he's really good at yardage after a catch. Like I've watched that guy get.
Well, it's not even that. He's catching a lot of deep balls.
Yeah.
So he's been kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
But he would be my sleeper. And the reason why I would say him is because the fact that he has done certain things that hasn't been, done in a while, especially with the triple threat thing. But like, one thing I'm shocked with is the fact that I think, let me click on this. He is the only receiver to average over 100 yards. I'm really shocked Justin Jefferson didn't, and Devontae Adams didn't.
Wait, do you mean 100 yards a game or 1,000 yard season?
I said 100 yards, so I'm not talking 1,000. But see, here's my thing. A lot of people focus on that 1,000-yard crap, which that is a big achievement, but that doesn't even mean anything anymore. You're adding another game, so that's like, what is it now? So 1,000 yards divided by 17. So you go from having to get 62, and again, it's not much, but you have to go from getting 62 and a half yards a game down to now 59 yards. That's still 3 yards short, but that means everybody's going to get close. Everybody's going to be 1,000 yard. Like in college, getting 1,000 yards means you're almost averaging 100 yards a game. But like Jamar Chase, it took him 81 catches to get 1,400. Deebo Samuel took 77 catches to get 1,400. And some of these other guys had to catch the ball 30, 40 more times to get, which then again, they're different kind of receivers. But anyways, I really feel like Aaron Rodgers will probably be the favorite out of that group because it always seems to be the quarterback. So
honestly, I don't even like. That's probably one of the things I don't like about the MVP award. And I understand that the quarterback is the best player or not the best player, but you can't do a lot of stuff without the quarterback on the field.
Yeah.
But I I would almost prefer their like NFL to do like college does and have an award for every position because I just think that's probably, and it's not for fairness sake. It's
Well, I
just
think
for
it's the fact that
this
they do give
recognition's sake.
rewards. They do give rewards for most rushing yards, most receiving yards, and things like that. So maybe
Most
that's what they're
valuable
trying.
player. Just- there's some things you can't help as a player. Like, let's take the defense. You might be the best defensive player on the field, but if they're going away from you every single time, you can't do anything about that except maybe chase down a play.
Yeah.
And it depends on what position you're playing and everything.
Well, that's like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Whatever Tampa Bay did in the Super Bowl last year, a lot of teams have tried to do it this year, and it's worked because that offense hasn't been, 3 plays and 80 yards. Deep threat to Tyreek Hill, 30 yards to Travis Kelce. It's just they've been boring to watch, and fantasy wise, it's been kind of crap.
And those guys are starting to show their, I'm gonna say, age.
No, not being 30 and mid 20s.
Travis Kelce still looked pretty young today whenever he put that touchdown on.
I don't care. I hope they both start showing their age.
Mercy speed. Oh no, not Travis
Like,
Kelce.
they're
I need him
not-
for a few more years.
No, it's
I
not
hope
an
they
age
go
thing.
0-21 next year.
George
Even
Kittle
though there's
is
only
just
like-
not doing it.
There's only like 17 games or 18 games. I want it there to be 0-21 next year.
All right, guys. I think that's going to be it for the podcast tonight. We'll have to continue some of our other topics. Would love to continue the Aaron Rodgers thing with our Packers fan. Maybe I'll have to throw a bet in there or something with them now since my Niners are playing the Packers next week. So, but that'll be it for our podcast this week. Maybe have another one soon, talking about some more NFL stuff and more Marvel things coming in the future. Thanks for listening.